This is the title of the presentation. I was asked that if you're investing in companies, how do you win a deal, right? So this is a chart from Mattermark. If you're not following Mattermark, you should. They essentially are collecting all the data of all the venture deals throughout the U.S. And specifically, this came from a post they did around, is there a Series A crunch? So let's just talk about 500 startups, right? Like a lot of startups are getting seed funded, right? 100,000, 500,000, a million, 2 million. I met with the CEO today. She's raising a $4 million seed round. It's unbelievable. So nonetheless, there's a lot of seed rounds. This chart goes back to 2005, and you kind of see the inflection point in 2009, 2010, and 2011. And basically, at this point, everybody's got a fund. I mean, it's kind of like 2006. If you're a real estate agent, you should have a fund. So what that means is getting to the A is really, 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 really hard. So what does that mean? If you're in the seed investing world, how do you win a deal? Be super fast. It's not complicated, right? Be quick, but don't hurry is what I always tell investors. And this is my advice is, and I'll give you some background if I didn't get you how I'm here. So I'm a co-founder of Science. We're the guys who incubated Dollar Shave Club, Dog Vacay, Home Hero. We have a bunch of stuff that we've built. I personally am in charge of all the fundraising for all the companies. So, I go and pitch with the CEOs. For Dollar Shave Club, it was seed A, B, up to the C, the D kind of basically did on his own. But I, at this point in the last 4 years, have probably had somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 no's. I mean, I got 2 no's today. So I pitch all day, all the time for 1, 2, 3 companies. I'm typically also, so with that, we've raised $350 million the last 3.5 years for just our science company portfolio. And then I've advised and or helped other companies, friends of mine or companies I'm personally an angel investor or advisor, probably call it another $200, $300 million on the other side, right? So I know a lot about fundraising, unfortunately. I don't want to, but I do. Think about 3,000 no's. If someone says, why would I keep doing it? But it's fun, right? This week alone, I had a company close a $10 million round, and it feels great for the first-time entrepreneurs to get that. But the process of which they get that, I had lunch with a woman today. I'm probably will announce in a couple months, the round, one of the biggest execs from Facebook, another startup. This is a woman you should just give her a check, right? And for her to go through the process of her raising, it's a nightmare. And ultimately, if you're the investor, what you're going to end up is building a brand of if you were easy or if you were not. Wait, let me go. And I have a general rule to all entrepreneurs raising. And so my retrospect, if you're investing, you should think of it how they're looking at empathetically. 24 hours, right? If a seed investor, if we go back, does 1 or 2 a month, and an A investor is doing 3 deals a year, and a B investor, same thing, 2 or 3 deals a year. They're not that busy. You're not that busy. If you're an investor, you're full of shit if you're like, I'm busy, because you're not that busy. If you love something and you want something done, if you want a deal to win it, it's a 24-hour rule. If you're an entrepreneur and if you think an investor is interested, if they did not contact you in the last 24 hours, be generous. Maybe, if you met them in the morning, give them till the evening of the next day. But if they did not contact you in 24 hours, they're not interested. In the history of every deal I've ever been a part of, the 24-hour rule applies, right? That means they emailed you after the meeting. They texted you. Hell, a retweet. I'm doing one right now, a deal where at least the VC literally just retweeted something that I just did. I'm like, oh, he's engaged. Showing this engagement, but the 24-hour rule applies from the moment the first meeting to follow up. I need diligence. I need to talk to references. Hey, I got questions about this. Can we do coffee? Can we jump on a phone call? Even if it's just scheduling. Okay, look, can you come in next Thursday? But if they scheduled it that next day, right, there's interest. So think about as you're investing, you're trying to win deals, especially hot deals, the 24 rule applies. Again, there's a company up north that just raised a $10 million round. They ended up getting 3 term sheets, right? The firm that won the deal was not the first that got the term sheet. It was actually the second. But the impetus was that the partner on his 40th birthday, right, instead of spending it with his family and his children, took this entrepreneur out to dinner, right? And I'm on the phone with the entrepreneur basically every day through this raising process, and I said, like, he wants the deal. Like, he's passionate. He wants it. It's his birthday, right? Let's walk through everybody else that says they want to do the deal, right? Or in the price that they gave you. And in the mind of the entrepreneur, right, for your sacrifice, which is really how big of a sacrifice is to take another meeting, it's really impactful what that 24-hour rule means. The other, right, personality, do you love this person, right? Marriage. If you're investing, I saw Paige earlier speak, right? He said the same thing. As an investor, he's going to look at a deal and say, is this a company I would go work for, right? If you're an investor, think of this as marriage, especially when we talk about if you're an A round or a B round investor, same thing as your entrepreneur looking to investors. This is marriage. They're going to be on your board for a long time. I mean, I know VCs who've been on boards for 13 years. Could you imagine that? No exit, 13 years later. Like, you want to kill yourself. It's marriage. So the personality of it is important, right? So winning deals, not that being affable is one thing, but you should really only go and fight for deals where know that they're measuring you with a stick to say, are you a person I'm going to marry, right? You're going to be on my board. Your job as an investor, right, and if you're on the board, is to decide whether or not you fire that CEO. Like, I always tell the CEO, remember, you don't own the company anymore when you take other people's money. The board's job is to decide on every board meeting, should I fire you? That's it, right? And so knowing that, and knowing that the eyes of the entrepreneur is looking at you and saying, am I going to marry you? On both sides, don't ever, it's not always about the price. It's not always about the firm and the name. The partner makes a big difference. This kind of goes to the next thing, which is like fair deal, right? So going back to the same one, just raised $10 million this week. Another firm that gave the term sheet, tier 1 firm, priced it at like almost 40% below the other deal. Right? It wasn't a fair deal. And then as soon as the term sheet from the other firm came in and the entrepreneur said, hey, I can't take your deal because you're literally 4% less, what'd they do? They raised the price. And I said, tell them to go screw themselves. So they knew full well they knew what the fair price is, but their initial was that they're going to try to take advantage of you, thinking that there wasn't competition. It ended up being a 3-term sheet deal nonetheless. So fair deal is this nomenclature that ultimately the price. So let's walk through the math and things, right? I get asked this question all the time when I'm raising for one of my companies. Okay, how much are you raising? Let's make the math easy. $10 million. What's the price? That's a trick question. Nobody answers that question. Like, why would you ever negotiate against yourself? So as a VC, don't ask that question. But no, the mind of every deal out there is that the range is 20 to 30% dilution. Generally speaking, 30 is if you're probably not a first-time founder and it's early, there's not a lot of traction. 20, second-time founder, maybe some traction. Super crazy deals that you probably more read about on TechCrunch get done at like 15% dilution, but don't kid yourself, those are very far and few between if you look at the volume of deals that get done. So, right, as an entrepreneur, I always kind of put out the number that I know, and as the investor, know when the entrepreneur says a number in the back of your mind, you're not going to get a massive discount, and that we all talk about a fair deal, and this will all come back to something else. So, it's okay to say no. It's amazing how entrepreneurs get ghosted. Those that you date, it's kind of the same thing, right? So you do the meeting, you go on the date. You do the meeting, VC says what? Oh my God, that's a great idea. That's amazing. That's congratulations. Let's follow up, and they do nothing. Right? The option value of saying yes later if other people jump in on the deal. Right? I'm on a great Twitter thread right now with Hunter Walk, if you follow him on Twitter, about like basically single liners of how people don't really say no. Right? It's okay to say no. Some of the firms I respect the most are the ones that say no very, very quickly. Right? John Callahan from True Ventures, usually a no within 48 hours. Mark Andreessen, usually a no within 48 hours. Very specific, very concise, like, here's why I'm saying no, good luck. And amazing enough, you got to think about it, an entrepreneur who's raising money, right, on an average deal for me, I'm talking 70 investors, 70. And it's just a spreadsheet, man. Moving people. Here's people I need to talk to. Here's the people who I'm setting up a meeting with. Here's people I've met with. Here's people who are interested, yes and no's. And I just need to move you down the pipeline. But if you get stuck in the I've met with you, it's just that scratch you can't itch, and it just becomes irritating to entrepreneurs. And over time, your brand becomes the person that never does a deal, right? All this will tie into something, which is be kind and be helpful. Even if you say no, it's okay to be kind to people and be helpful, right? Make that introduction if you really can. Business development really matters. Helping them recruit, helping them get a deal, giving them some sort of advice, positive or negative. I generally tell people the truth. Like, I'm brutal. Like, my brand typically is that if you ask me, I'm going to tell you if it's a dumb idea. I try not to sugarcoat things, right? But being helpful, which is more important, right? If I know somebody that can help, I'll ping them, right? Double opt-in introductions, by the way. Everyone knows what a double opt-in introduction is. It's like, oh, great, I might know somebody for you. Let me ask first before I make the introduction. I'll ask. If they say no, the introduction's not going to happen. So I always do the double opt-ins. But being kind and being helpful will ultimately do this, which is word gets around. I was just talking to the CrossCut guys who are investors in a couple of our deals. And blackballing investors is a real thing, right? Just this week I blackballed somebody. It was a very simple reason why I blackballed them. And I have a list of about 180 investors that I generally know, 180 partners of firms from seed all the way to really, really late stage companies. And over time, I start crossing them out, right? And over time, I have a list of people I blackballed. And every single week, there's one company I get introduced to that's raising money that wants some advice. They're in the middle of a round. They're talking to so-and-so. What's your advice? What do you think of them? And about every other week, a name comes up from a firm that just pissed me off. Like, you don't want to take their money, right? Word gets around. We live in a world where between Crunchbase, right, which Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, et cetera, you can get to everybody, but you can kind of look at everybody's portfolio and get to a CEO. So you're from a firm, your investment, I can be like, okay, what did you invest in? Great, great, great. It's a click away, a tweet away to talking to somebody that you dealt with. And fundamentally, word gets around, whether it's in LA, whether it's in San Francisco, I can categorize literally every single person who writes a check today. Every seed investor, venture firm, seed A, B, C, I can tell you what their personality is, what they're good at, what they're bad at, if they're an asshole or they're not. And all the things previously I said, word gets around where your brand fundamentally will end up getting built, right? So knowing what your personal brand is over time, right? This is a long-term game. I've been doing this for over 10 years, at least just in consumer, about 10 years of enterprise before that. But fundamentally, all the investors I've been working with, I've known most for between 7 to 10 years, right? A lot of these were, look, the general partners at some of the biggest firms today, right? Josh Ellman, partner at Greylock. He, 8 years ago, worked at LinkedIn, then he worked at Facebook, then he worked at Twitter, then he became an associate at Greylock 3 years ago, and now he's the GP there, right? So these people, I've known him for a decade. Right? I'm comfortable enough where I can text him, I can DM him, I can call him. Like the rapport, I know his brand. He's one of the most helpful product. If you're building a consumer internet company, I guarantee you're going to call him, right? Every investor has a brand that they've built, not just this year, not just the 6 months in the last deal, but it takes a long, long time, right? On the seed side, Hunter Walk has a very specific brand, right? Josh Felsen and Freestyle has a very specific brand. Right? Everybody has this brand. You'll be surprised that over time, look, 30-second interactions a minute, it's hard to judge, but like when I say your interactions and brands over time is when you get pitched an entrepreneur, right, in that 30 minutes or an hour, pay attention. Don't be rude. Show up on time. You will be shocked on the ripple effects of, there's still one story I remember, Paige actually told it to me. I'll never forget it. It's been 5 years. VC pestering somebody he angel invested, right, was pestering her. Please take this meeting, please take this meeting, please take this meeting. She's like, look, I'm not even raising. She finally says yes, right? Changes her schedule, sets up a time, and at this, Paige is like, yeah, you should take a meeting, right? So he shows up late. He's on his phone the whole time. He basically, the entire meeting tells her it's a bad idea, why her business is wrong, why it's bad. Well, as you can imagine, right, that got back to Paige. That's gotten back to me, and Paige has told that story many times across many parties and cocktail parties at his house, etc. I've repeated that story, and we're 7 years in. That story's still floating around. So those those meetings when you're taking from entrepreneurs, know what happens. And those times when you take the meeting, you promise follow up, you don't, right? Those are even worse. I mean, the behavior amongst kind of venture in your brand, you'll be kind of surprised. It used to be the power of money, right? But if I go back here, look how you've been commoditized. Like investors are commodity. Like money is everywhere, right? So if you don't do these other things, you will build a brand of which you will not win a deal. Winning a deal they're simple. Be fast, right? Be fair. Say no. Be helpful. Know that word gets around, and know what your ultimate brand is going to be. Ask me anything. Questions? No? Who here does angel investments? Anybody? A round? B? So everyone else is raising money. I can talk more about how to raise money if you like. Who here is raising money or has in the future? So look, raising money it's so fucking hard. Like I literally consider myself one of the best. More because I'm not great at it, it's because I've done it so much, right? It's just repetition. You play enough of something, you generally become pretty good. I always drive on a chip in my shoulder. For everyone who's ever said no to me, I remember it. Right? I can't wait to fucking be successful in the call. I do it all the time. We had 70 no's on the seed around the dollar shake. Don't think I've pinged every single one of those investments. Oh, you fucked up. Where's your money? Right? Well, I mean, I do it all the time. Oh, can't hear you. It's a numbers game. And fundamentally, when you take money from somebody, look, if they say no, they're the idiot in your mind, of course, right? That's the thing. But know that this goes back to it's a long game. This is not going to be your only startup. There's going to be again. Go ahead.
How different was the pitch for Dollar Shave Club from investor 1 to investor 70?
So generally raising, I always call it the first 5 pitches are throwaways, right? Like it's much different. So even bad investors ask good questions once in a while, right? Even stupid people, blind squirrel finds a nut thing. But being concise and knowing what the answers are and how to answer, not being stumbled, knowing your data, right? Knowing the answers. Raising money is all about storytelling, right? I'm in the middle of one round right now, and firm says to me, like, we're going to do the deal, right? Expect a term sheet. It's like, but before we figure out what the price is, let's meet up before we present again to the partnership to figure out the prices, and let's talk about what the story is, like what the big vision is. And I said, dude, I've known you, I'm very candid with all the people I raise money from because I've known them so long, and I've probably pitched this person 15 times, right? I said, how bullshit is it that you're going to determine what I pretend to make up about some sort of story that fundamentally would be revisionist history anyways, right? Facebook was face mash, right? Twitter was a texting service. Like Uber was literally a service for us to drive around in San Francisco, have cars available for us when we go out drunk. Like revisionist history tells you these like founders have this amazing vision, but it's all bullshit, right? So But unfortunately, it is the game that we play. And storytelling over time just gets better, right? If you're before launch, it's all about story, right? The worst thing that can fuck up a raise is data. Like I always tell people, you either raise before or you raise way after. If you have some data, you're kind of screwed. The other thing is linear. The other saying when raising money is linear is flat. What I mean by that is I have one customer today, I got 2 customers tomorrow, I got 3 customers the month after, I got 4 months. No, linear. Say, great. As an investor, I can sit there and say, got it. So the price of this round is 4 pre. Well, in 4 months, they'll be twice as big. And in 12 months, they'll be 4 times as big. And okay, great. So I can just de-risk by 100x and pay twice as more. I'll wait. So the nuances of raising money are, it's vast, but a lot of these little things of, if you're raising money, know 6 months out, start the process in your mind and the data within the company 3 months out, find 3 things that are not linear, right, that are actually going up and to the right. It turns out it doesn't have to be about revenue if you're a commerce company. It doesn't have to be about users. There's other pieces of the data, engagement data, number of times they open an app, right? Of the subset of people who are there, God, wow, they really are using much more. I mean, I can go through every product out there. Even if you're flat, there's something, if you have something that's interesting, right? There's something in your data. You just gotta look that's going up, and then you have to tell a story. Why that's important. Why is it, look, yes, my MAUs are relatively flat, but the people who stay, wow, their session count went from 2.7 sessions a day to 3.7. That's massive. Why is that important? Tell the whole story behind that. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Anybody else? All right.
All right, Peter. Thank you.